Imagine this. A king sits on his throne, surrounded by gold, power, and absolute authority. Every man in the room bows before him. Every decision, every command, every sud destiny of the kingdom seems to rest in his hands. But what if I told you the most important decision he makes today is not truly his? What if the war he is about to declare, the alliance he is about to accept, the man he is about to trust, was never really his choice? Look closer. Behind the throne there are voices, quiet, patient, watching. Men who do not wear crowns. Men who do not lead armies. Men whose names are often forgotten. And yet, they shape everything. They whisper, they guide, they influence, and sometimes they control. Because in the medieval world, the king did not think alone. He listened. But who did he listen to? Who stood close enough to shape his thoughts, but far enough to avoid blame? Who could turn fear into war, doubt into betrayal, trust into power, and the most dangerous question of all, if you were the king, how would you know if the voice in your ear was telling you the truth? Stay with us, because today we step into one of the most powerful and most dangerous roles in medieval history. Welcome to Whispers of the Middle Ages, where we uncover the hidden, strange, and often unsettling stories from a time where power was never what it seemed. We upload new stories every day, revealing the secrets behind crowns, courts, and kingdoms. Make sure to subscribe and join us, because the past still has many stories left to whisper. To understand the advisors of medieval Europe, you must first understand the king's greatest weakness. He could not know everything. A kingdom was vast, too vast for one man to fully control. News traveled slowly. Truth was often distorted, and decisions had to be made quickly. The king needed guidance, and that is where the advisors came in. At first glance, their role seemed simple. They were there to offer counsel, to provide knowledge, to help the king make the right decisions. But advice is never neutral. Every advisor carried his own ambitions, his own loyalties, his own fears. When a king asked for guidance, he was not receiving truth. He was receiving a version of it, one shaped by the man who spoke. Advisors came from many backgrounds. Some were nobles born into power, raised to understand politics and influence. Others were clergy, bishops, scholars, men of the church, whose authority came not from land, but from knowledge and faith. Some were experienced warriors, offering strategic advice in times of war. Others were educated scribes, trained in law, diplomacy, and administration. But no matter their origin, they all shared one thing: access. They were close to the king, closer than most. And in a world where proximity meant power, this made them dangerous. Imagine standing beside the king as he hesitates. A decision must be made: war or peace, trust or suspicion, punishment or mercy. And in that moment of uncertainty, you speak. Just a few words, carefully chosen, calm, confident, persuasive. The king listens. And just like that, the future changes. That is the power of an advisor. But with power comes temptation. Not all advisors were loyal. Some sought to protect the kingdom. Others sought to protect themselves. And some sought something more: influence, control. Because the advisor does not need to rule. He only needs to guide the one who does. And sometimes that guidance became manipulation. An advisor might exaggerate a threat to push the king toward war. He might hide information to prevent a rival from gaining favor. He might recommend allies who would benefit him personally. And the king would never know. Because how can you question the man you trust to guide you? This is what made advisors so powerful and so dangerous. Their influence was invisible. There were no armies marching under their command, no crowns upon their heads. And yet, their words could start wars or end them. In some courts, advisors formed councils, groups of trusted individuals who met regularly to discuss matters of state. These councils were meant to bring balance, different opinions, different perspectives. But even within these groups, competition existed. Advisors argued, they disagreed, they tried to outmaneuver one another, because being heard by the king meant influence, and influence meant power. As some advisors became favorites, men the king trusted above all others. Their opinions carried more weight. Their presence was constant. They had the king's ear at all times. But this position was dangerous because favor could change quickly. A new advisor could rise, a rumor could spread, a mistake could be made. And suddenly, the man who once stood closest to power could find himself alone, removed, exiled, or worse. Because in medieval courts, falling from favor was rarely gentle. Now consider the role of the church. Many advisors were clergy, men who spoke not only with knowledge, but with moral authority. They did not simply advise the king on politics. They advised him on what was right, on what was just, on what God would approve. And in a deeply religious world, this made their words incredibly powerful. To ignore them was not just a political risk, it was a spiritual one. This gave them a unique advantage. They could shape decisions not just through logic, but through belief. But even this power could be misused, because when someone claims to speak for something greater, who can challenge them? Life as an advisor was not easy. It required intelligence, patience, awareness. Every word had to be measured, every suggestion carefully delivered, because a wrong move could have consequences, not just for the kingdom, but for the advisor himself. They lived in a world of constant tension, watching others, being watched, trusting, but never completely. Because even among advisors, betrayal existed. One might whisper against another, one might twist another's words, all in the pursuit of influence. And yet, despite the danger, the role remained desirable, because for those who mastered it, the rewards were immense. Power without visibility, influence without responsibility, the ability to shape history without ever sitting on the throne. So ask yourself, if you stood beside the king, if he turned to you and asked for guidance, what would you say? Would you tell him the truth, or the version of the truth that benefits you? Would you protect the kingdom, or protect your position? And most importantly, would you even realize when your influence becomes control? Because in the end, the most powerful words in a kingdom were not spoken from the throne. They were whispered beside it. If you enjoyed this journey into the hidden world of medieval advisors, don't forget to subscribe to Whispers of the Middle Ages. We bring you daily stories from the medieval world. Stories of power, mystery, and the unseen forces that shaped history. Because sometimes the quietest voices are the ones that change everything.